Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, as are the NBA and NHL playoffs. There are so many ways to get in the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from Major League Baseball to the NBA, the NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Penn State fans, are you feeling confident that the Nittany Lions can win college football's national championship next season? Lock in your futures bet at betonline.ag today. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State. I'm Tom Hannafin, flying solo today. A lot of developments this week in regard to the college football playoff, the new seeding model that is going to go into effect for the 2025-2026 college football playoff. A lot of discussion as well about the potential of the College Sports Commission, the NCAA, no longer enforcing NIL structure, rules, regulations, all those sorts of things. So there's a lot of little, not so little things, but like big things within the sport to discuss today. I want to start with the college football playoff model, in that it was announced by Ross Dellinger that in the 2025-2026 season, you're going to see a straight seeding model. So what does that mean? There was a lot of dispute over how the college football playoff was seeded last year, and that it was the highest ranked 4 conference champions that would get buys, right? A lot of people did not agree with this, myself included, because why the hell is Arizona State getting a bye? Big 12 champion, you understand. Why is Boise State getting a bye? Mountain West champion. It just did not make any sense. And Penn State dealt with that in regard to playing Boise State. And I think it's safe to say that was an inferior opponent. Penn State obviously won that game handily for the most part. So I think it's more rewarding the best teams so that the best teams are getting a bye potentially. So the potential bracket, as it could have looked like had this past season's college football playoff been reseeded, you would have seen Oregon as a 1 seed, Georgia as a 2 seed, Texas as a 3 seed, Penn State as a 4 seed, getting a bye. So I just think this is fascinating, because then you would have run into some very different situations in terms of the matchups that could have played out. Oregon would have played the winner of 8 seed Indiana and 9 seed Boise State. Georgia, the 2 seed, would have played the winner of the 7 and 10 seeds. 7 would have been Tennessee. 10 would have been SMU. Texas at number 3 would have played the winner of number 6 Ohio State or number 11 Arizona State. So theoretically, you probably still would have gotten Ohio State versus Texas there. And then Penn State at 4 again, based on if you restructured this past year's college football playoff, would have played the winner of 5 Notre Dame and 12 Clemson. So there's some elements of this to dissect, and that this model does not reward the winner of a conference championship game. And I think it over rewarded this past season. I don't think it made sense for Arizona State and Boise State to be getting a bye because I did not believe them to be better football teams and a stronger challenge at that point in the season to warrant getting a bye at that point in time. This does de-emphasize the conference championship game, which part of me is okay with because I personally don't put a ton of stock in it to begin with, and that I feel like it's just an extra game that TV networks want to put out there just to get an extra game. And look at how many teams represented the Big Ten this past year, in that you had Oregon winning the Big Ten championship, beating Penn State. Penn State, Ohio State, and Indiana all made it as at-large teams, and you could see the path that everybody took. Hell, an at-large team won the national championship in Ohio State. An at-large team in Notre Dame made the national championship. So it forced people to look at this all over again. And I think, unfortunately, what's going to happen here is you're going to see that conversation that Kirk Herbstreit made infamous of deserving versus best. And you're going to continue to see that in terms of who makes the college football playoff. I think there's that. But then it's also looking at the seeding and saying, who are the best teams 1 through 12? And I think that's important, especially when you're handing out bye weeks accordingly. Does the Big 12 champion, does the ACC champion, does the group of 5 highest ranked conference champion, whatever, does that team really deserve a bye? Or should the 4 highest ranked teams get a bye week? I tend to agree with the latter. The 4 highest ranked teams should get a bye week, and that's what we're going to get this upcoming season. But that doesn't mean you're a conference champion necessarily. I would assume that theoretically you should be in that mix, but you just never know how these things can work out. And then also it comes back to the human element of this. How is the playoff committee going to rank these teams? So then all of a sudden there's the dispute of who makes the college football playoff. And then there's going to be the further dispute of, well, who are 5 and 6, which was kind of what we had with the 4-team model to begin with, who made it up at all. But now it's going to be that argument of 1 through 4. Well, who are the 4 truly best teams in the country? How do you measure that? How do you gauge that? And unfortunately, there is no uniform way of doing that in college football at this point. It's all subjective. So we're going to continue to deal with that, which is extremely frustrating. But it does encourage you in that Penn State opening up the season theoretically within the top 5. I'd be shocked if Penn State was not within the top 5 when the preseason rankings come out in the near future. It sets Penn State up for success. And it really, again, no disrespect to the other teams that are on Penn State's schedule, but this is once again a 2-game season. It's versus Oregon at home on September 27th, and then at Columbus to play Ohio State on November 1st. Every other game on Penn State's schedule, Penn State should win, either handily or, even if you want to call it a coin flip, 50-50 for a handful of those games. All due respect to those opponents, but Penn State should be playing a 2-game season this year. And then it's, okay, do you somehow sweep Oregon and Ohio State, which would be enormous for this program and send a message throughout college football? If you lose to one of them, which one of them is it? How does it look? That's a very important thing that I think we get lost in so often, is people will just look at the box score, that sort of thing. If Penn State, for instance, were to blow out Oregon at home and Oregon stumbles later on in the season, is that win as impressive? To go to Ohio State and win, if it's narrow, if it's ugly, if all those sorts of things, is Penn State getting the same love that other teams deserve? If Penn State were to make the Big Ten championship game, do they win? Do they lose narrowly? Do they lose badly? Like, there's all these ways that the playoff committee can evaluate the way that Penn State's season could potentially play out. So I'm very curious to see how those games go. And it's not the foregone conclusion that Penn State would be in the college football playoff. However, even worst case scenario, which I would call 10-2, if Penn State were to drop both games against Oregon and Ohio State, Penn State still should make it in as an at-large, as they did last season. then you're into a situation where you're hopeful that Penn State is hosting a home game once again within the college football playoff. And a lot of remodeling has been done to Beaver Stadium. So is it as loud? All those sorts of questions have been out there from Penn State fans. But there's a lot of different ways that this could split. I at least am happy to see that the best teams, the best 4 teams, will get the bye in this year's college football playoff. But again, we're going to revisit this entire argument of who are the 4 best teams and who believes who is the 4 best teams. And the human element of this is going to be frustrating once again. One thing that's been extremely frustrating for college football fans for a long time is the entity known as the NCAA. And for a long time, a lot of us have been asking, why does this entity exist other than to schedule postseason championship tournaments, flights, hotels, paper cups at March Madness, that sort of stuff. Like, it just, the punishments that get levied get done years after the fact. There's never any consistency with it. Well, at least now it seems like there could be conversation of, well, we will have some sort of consistency in punishments because the NCAA is not going to handle it. There's been discussion of the creation of the College Sports Commission, which honestly just sounds like a rebranding of the NCAA, just in a separate body that would oversee the Power Four, but then also leave the punishments when it comes to NIL bumpers, rules, and regulations, whenever the hell those get all figured out, to the conferences. So this is, again, the NCAA saying, hey, we're not going to handle this. We'll let you guys handle it. Everything is going to be in-house. Everything is going to potentially be different from conference to conference. The likelihood of this being uniform across the board is slim, but this is all, a possibility right now. And I think the thing that's so frustrating is it would make sense if the Big Ten and the SEC, for instance, had the same cap space, call it that, the same cap space for their rosters. Say everybody's cap space was $10 million, $15 million. There's been a lot of discussion of the $20.5 million that every school is going to be allotted to spread throughout their NIL payments to athletes of every sport they have. So then you start getting into the whole question of, all right, how much do you allocate for football? How much do you allocate for men's basketball, for volleyball, for fencing? Like, the list goes on and on. So specifically, if this sports commission and the conferences could get to the point where they actually are deciding on specific cap space for football, say everybody in the SEC and the Big Ten were in a situation where everyone has a cap of $10 million for their roster starting whenever. I would be very curious to see what that model is. And unfortunately, within this world of college football that we're living in, there's too many workarounds. And the thing that I think a lot of people are not processing is that there have been workarounds for decades. The McDonald's bag full of money isn't going away. And you have all these boosters and people supporting these programs, alumni, et cetera, who want to see these programs succeed. Just because there's now pathways of, there's rules and regulations for NIL, those sorts of things, there will be workarounds. So how much of this actually has teeth? How much would this potential college sports commission actually enforce these things? And like, what are we enforcing? What are we regulating with every individual school? Then it begs the question of, okay, well, you could see the Big Ten and the SEC being on level playing field in terms of compensation, in terms of cap space, like all those sorts of things. Well, then what happens to the ACC, the Big 12, whatever the Pac-12 is now, but like the American, the Sun Belt, like all these different places, they're not going to have $10 million to spend on their cap space. So you're unfortunately going to continue to see this divide grow greater and greater within the world of college football. And I think an important thing that we learn, I was talking about the college football playoff earlier on, is NIL has created parity in a positive way, in that you're seeing new schools, not the conventional blue bloods, but new schools get an opportunity to have a seat at the table. SMU all of a sudden bowing up and having tremendous financial support. There's been a lot of talk about Texas Tech having a tremendous amount of financial support going into 2025 and beyond. Uh, Within the Big Ten, look at the way that Indiana has bowed up. Can they keep that going? Illinois, are they a program that's really serious about making the college football playoff and getting over the hump? We know that Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, and Michigan are serious about that. USC recently potentially canceling their rivalry of nearly 100 years with Notre Dame. Is that them trying to soften their schedule so that they can set themselves up for the college football playoff? So all of these things factoring into how you're going to be able to build your roster, who you're going to be able to attract, how much money you're going to be able to pay these people, that sort of thing. There's just so much change within the business of college football. It's so early to tell if there's actually going to be some strict enforcement for NIL and getting this thing organized, because I think that's what we all want as college football fans. And I think we're all sick of hearing about the business of college football. And we just want to get back to the joy of the sport, the tradition, the history, the pageantry, the fun behind all of this. But a lot of that has been taken out of it, unfortunately. So my 2 cents on some of these changes that are coming with college football and the college football playoff, the reseeding, I'm like, cool, but you still have not fixed the element of the handful of people locked in a room that for one reason or another are going to put this team over this team. And then the endless debate about, well, how did you get there? Show your work, essentially. Why do you think this team is better? Why do you think this team deserves to get a bye week? That sort of thing versus another, even if they did this on their schedule, that sort of thing. The deserving versus best argument is going to continue to come up. And then when it comes to NIL and, people talk about tampering, are you going to be able to create contracts for players? I mean, a collective bargaining agreement, all these things are still so much up in the air, and the house settlement issue continues to be out there. It's kind of a mess. It's been a mess for a very long time. So personally, as a college football fan, it hurts the way that I enjoy the sport. Like, I can't wait to just get to the season and see how this thing goes. And then, not to mention, there has been an ongoing conversation recently about, could college football go to a pay-per-view model? The former boss at ESPN, John Skipper, talking about, well, what if a game on your favorite team's schedule, not exactly a big game, take Penn State versus Villanova, Penn State versus Nevada to open the season. How much are you willing to pay for that out of pocket to watch it a la carte, for instance, from your home? Probably not a lot, right? But how much are you willing to pay for Penn State versus Oregon to watch it from home? How much are you willing to pay for Penn State versus Ohio State, the biggest game on Penn State's schedule going into 2025? So there's a lot of ways that the business of college football is changing college football and damaging it, which is unfortunate. I think the thing I'm trying to focus on as a college football fan, someone who attended Penn State, covers the team, has been a fan of Penn State football since I was a kid, is Penn State is set up for success in 2025 as a football program. And this reseeding possibility potentially can help out. Like, you have to see how the season goes, and it's way too early to predict it. And I know a lot of people have put out predictions, or a lot of people I've seen that think Penn State can make the national championship. A lot of people believe Texas could beat Penn State in the national championship. But again, at the point we're sitting here in May, it's just entirely too early to predict any of these things. But I do believe that Penn State is set up for success for the future. I think the way that Penn State has organized its program on the NIL front, talked about it a little bit earlier on this week with Justin King about the way Penn State handles the transfer portal, the possibility that 4 starters on offense and 5 starters on defense are transfer portal acquisitions. They've been long-term projects. They've been players that Penn State has not necessarily thrown a huge bag of money at, like, hey, you got to start right this second. They've had that issue in the past. You can look at somebody like Julian Fleming, select moments where that did pay off, but did it really pay off to the degree you were hoping it would? Penn State, I think the way that they have structured this program, the way they do business with the players, and the way that they're trying to set themselves up for the future of college football, as uncertain as it is, Penn State's set up for success. Penn State is absolutely set up to make a run for the national championship in 2025. It's just navigating these very choppy waters. Let me know what you guys think. Hop in the comments section. Get at us on social media. We appreciate it so much. We'll continue to keep an eye on all of these changes within the world of college football. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.